Hey guys, welcome in. Happy Saturday, Pack Saturday here across the board. We've got a little bit of everything, including a football game or two, believe it or not. But we are bringing on our good friend Alex B. Smith. SportsMemo.com is where you can find him. He is a NHL god in certain parts of the country. He's also snowed and frozen in somewhere in Minnesota, so we're glad to be able to contact him and talk to him on this Saturday. So Alex, welcome in, brother. I hope you're staying warm, man.
Yeah, I am, Joe. Yeah, I'm glad we were able to get the phone lines all connected together here in frosty Minnesota and reach out to you guys in lovely and warm Florida.
Well, I tell you, we got a couple things going on. We want to talk a little NHL with you here today. A couple of interesting games on the card. Also, big UFC night coming up, so I want to get your thoughts there. But I do want to remind folks, if you head over to SportsMemo.com, Alex, they can find you. They can find everything that you got going on there, right?
Yeah, well, all of my hockey plays are up there at sportsmemo.com, and we got the 5 days a week we have our show Puck Time. That's in conjunction with Wager Talk TV and Sports Memo. Myself, the Lawrence Presman, who's on, I know you've had him on many times, Andrew McInnes as well, and we break down the hockey cards 5 days a week. And Prez is out of town, but I'll be running the things. I'll be the host coming up this week, so definitely want to check that out over at Wager Talk TV. At
AxSmithSports on Twitter, rather, is where you should be tailing him. And we'll start in the NHL, Alex. A couple of games that you got circled on the card tonight that I know you were scratching your head a little bit about. Talk to us.
Yeah, this was one game, and this is probably the marquee game of the night. You got the Pittsburgh Penguins taking on the Tampa Bay Lightning, and you got the Penguins here anywhere between plus 150 or plus 165. And I get that the Penguins have been struggling a little bit. You know, we've seen them lose 3 straight games. They've lost 5 of their last 7. Evgeny Malkin and Justin Schultz, 2 key players, will be out in this game. But Tampa Bay hasn't really been faring too well either. Coming out of the All-Star break, we've seen them drop 3 of their last 5 games and lose to some teams like St. Louis, a team that had been struggling for a while. Now they've really got some things rolling along. But then also losing to teams like Vegas, whose offense has kind of been falling flat like they had at the beginning of the year. Teams that were looking good, like Tampa Bay right now, they're just kind of just treading water, and this is not a good time to be losing games in mid-February because you've got teams hot on the trail. When you look at both the Eastern and Western Conference, there's about 7 or 8 points dividing first place from last place. So this is a big game here, and I think Pittsburgh might be a live dog here. They have done really well, won 7 of the last 10 meetings against Tampa Bay.
Yeah, I'm looking right now, plus 160 on a money line. Over under, I'm looking across all of these over unders in the NHL, my friend. Everything's 6, 6.5. I mean, have we seen a 7 yet? Or are we heading that way, you think?
We had 3 7s, and ironically, 2 of them involved the same 2 teams, Tampa Bay and Toronto, and they both went under.
Wow.
So, we've seen the higher scoring happen, but whenever the market tries to adjust for that, then there's value going back the other way with the under. But, yeah, like I said, 6 is the new normal. We've had some 5.5s with a couple of teams. You got the slow-moving teams like Arizona and Dallas playing this afternoon, for example, at 5.5. But for the most part, 6s, that's kind of the standard, the gold standard. Like I said, 6.5. And you can shop around now. That's the beauty of it. Where before, if it was 5.5 one place, it's 5.5 everywhere. If it was 5 one place, that was just kind of a worldwide thing. Now you've got books that have to adjust between 6, 6.5. So you can shop around. If you like the under, get that 6.5. You like the over, just get the flat 6.
Love that. Alex B. Smith joining us. SportsMemo.com is where you can find him. One other game that you're looking at here tonight involves, to me, just one of the most underperforming teams ever, given the talent that they have. But the Edmonton Oilers are at home, look to be a dog there as well, taking on the San Jose Sharks. Talk to me.
Yeah, you guys, this Edmonton team that they had lost 6 games in a row in horrific fashion, mind you. Then they turn around at home and on the road and they beat Minnesota 4-1. You got to understand, it's the Minnesota Wild team that just lost their captain, one of their best players, in Mikko Koivu for the rest of the season, tore his ACL, and that whole team just seemed rattled by it. Edmonton had a 2-goal lead, added too late in the third period, and that was all she wrote for a 4-1 win at the Dog. But now they go and play a San Jose team that's won 4 in a row. They've been lighting up the scoreboard. We saw them put up 7 against Washington. We've seen them put up 5 against Calgary. It's another big division game, and this is the time of year, like I mentioned, you don't want to fall flat in your division. You got to win these big games, amongst the teams that you have to climb up against, the teams that more than likely you have to face if you go into the playoffs. Even with Erik Karlsson being questionable for the Sharks with a lower body injury, this is the Sharks team, like I said, still rolling against the Edmonton team that has completely fallen flat. We've seen San Jose win 5 of the last 6 meetings with Edmonton. They're also 6-3 on the road against division opponents. So they're not going to be afraid of playing in Edmonton, which might be colder than where I am right now in Minnesota. But the Sharks should be able to heat things up enough to take care of business and get a win here.
Not a big number, too. Minus 145 tonight versus Edmonton getting plus 125. And what do you think about all of these? I mean, is it too late if anybody is just starting now to get into the NHL season? We kept hearing first period overs, first period, first what is it over? Is it that they're not scoring as much anymore, or is it that the markets have just adjusted to the point where they've killed it?
It's the teams. The teams have really, buckled down on defense. For example, the main team that really started the trend, and I can take some responsibility for getting this started.
You were right there. I'm not going to lie. You were screaming and yelling about this, and nobody was listening at first.
Yeah, and then everybody got wind. So I got off the soapbox a little bit with this one, but the Hawks, for example, were a team, and they're still one of the top teams along with Tampa Bay in cashing first period overs. We've seen them cash 2 of the last 3. But the thing is, the reason why they're on this hot winning streak, they've won 5 games in a row, is because they're playing good defense now. And that was the issue when this whole trend first started. They went on a road trip. It was Patrick Kane who said, we're not starting off games well. He says, we're getting sloppy on our own end. And that was what was leading to these 1-1, 2-1 first periods, and these totals were going over night after night after night. Now that they've tightened things up in defense and they've got a good goaltender in Colin Delia, which has been able to kind of, him and the veteran Cam Ward have really worked well as a good tandem. That's exactly what the Hawks were trying to get out of Corey Crawford and Cam Ward, but of course, Crawford having the concussion issues. Wow. Delia has really stepped up since being called up from Rockford, and looks like he could be the goalie of the future for the Hawks. So these teams are playing tighter defense. And also, when you have these division matchups, like I mentioned, teams, they need points. So if a game's 2-2 or 3-3 late in the game, we're going to see these games going to overtime, which means we're seeing games start slow and then really amp up in the middle of the period, second and third, and then they kind of taper down depending on how things shake out in that middle period. So that first frame has become more of a feeling out process rather than trying to jump ahead and get the momentum.
Alex B. Smith joining us. SportsMemo.com is where you can find him. At AxSmith Sports on Twitter. Make sure you tail him there. 2 plays here he likes tonight. We got one underdog. I can't even believe I'm calling him an underdog, but the Penguins tonight, plus 160 on the road in Tampa, and the Sharks on the road as a road favorite there, laying 145 on the money line. Might be 2 plays that you want to consider. And then, of course, tonight, it's good when Conor McGregor is running out on Twitter and social media and saying how excited he is for UFC 234 tonight in Melbourne, Australia. And I guess he should be. This is going to be actually a pretty decent card here tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really excited for this. I'm a big UFC guy, and this is one of the better cards that I've seen in quite some time. And it's interesting because this is the first pay-per-view of 2019. There was supposed to be a UFC 233, but that's just kind of lost in limbo. That got canceled. And it's kind of a good thing it did because all the fights that were scheduled for that, we're going to be a pretty stacked card. It has spilled over. We've seen some really good UFC fight nights, which are now on ESPN+. And now we're seeing a really good pay-per-view card here with 234 headline with the middleweight title fight with Robert Whittaker in his home country going up against Kelvin Gastelum.
Yeah, it's it's Anderson Silva here. I mean, there's a lot of big names that that people are all interested and are all in here. And as we look at some of the big fights here on the card here tonight, give us a couple of the ones that you have circled here that you go, you know what, there might be some value here in some of these plays.
Well, the biggest value I've found has been in the main event. I mean, you're looking at a plus 200 dog like Kelvin Gastelum. This is a guy who's got some incredibly heavy hands, and he doesn't have to worry about. He had some issues at welterweight trying to cut down to 170. He's a bigger dude. It's just his natural frame, and we've seen him miss weight. Now he moved up to middleweight. He doesn't have to worry about those hard cuts anymore. He's fighting at his natural weight, which I think more fighters need to do, especially if they're struggling to either make weight or you're struggling to go the distance and fight. You're getting knocked out early or having to rely on knocking someone out quick. but Gastelum has the cardio now. He's got gas in the tank, and we've seen underdogs in title fights cash. So Amanda Nunes shocked the world and knock out Chris Cyborg. We saw Max Holloway cash as underdog. So this has been a trend of champ title fights where underdogs have won. I think Kelvin Gastelum is live. Robert Whittaker fighting at home, not that big of a deal. When we saw the last time the UFC was in Australia, there were 8 Australian fighters going up against non-Australian fighters. Australian fighters went 1-7. So there's no home field advantage for the Aussies here. I think Gastelum represents the USA well and get a win.
Plus 195 for Gastelum there, minus 235 for hometown Whittaker. Do you ever look, I mean, would you advise folks that maybe just looking at MMA for the first time, kind of new to betting on it, the rounds, the over-under, there are some decent prices here as we look, but should people even get caught up in how long it's going to last?
Oh, absolutely, because there's no other sport. If you look at any fight sport, be it boxing or MMA, the correlation between side and total is closer than it is in even basketball or baseball or hockey or football, in my opinion, because if you see a giant favorite, like we have 2 giant favorites here, Israel Adesanya and another one, the women's flyweight fight, Montana De La Rosa, minus 250, which isn't really that big. That's something I had to adjust with myself, where 250 is huge for a money line in the NHL, but in fighting, that's really actually a cheap price. So you have to kind of adjust your mindset with the prices there in fighting. But when you have a heavy favorite, then you kind of look at the total. And I'm looking at this total with De La Rosa going up against another Australian, Nadia Kassem. De La Rosa, whose husband also fights in the UFC. She's had a really good camp from all the reports I've heard. And I don't see this fight going, to be a short fight. Most of the women's fights, it's over 2/3 of the women's fights in the last several years. We've seen them go the distance. There's just not a lot of knockout power, especially in those smaller weight classes. And I think that's what we're going to see here. I think 2.5 and minus 125, minus 130. I think there's some great value here. I don't know who's going to win this fight, to be honest. I think it could go either way, but that's the perfect thing. You don't have to look at the side. All you got to look at the total, and I think we're going to see this fight go the distance.
Yeah, 3 rounds for the women there, and 2.5. If it goes the distance, bam, you're cashing a ticket there. He is Alex B. Smith, joining us here, sportsmemo.com, UFC 234 tonight. And as we continue down the card here, another fight I know that you had circled is Sam Alvey taking on, is it Jim Crute? Am I pronouncing that name correct?
I think it's Crute. He's Australian. That's what I've heard both, so I'm not quite sure, but I think it's Crute. It could be his nickname is the Brute, so that makes me think it might be Crute.
Jim Brute Crute. Go, baby, go, Jim Brute Crute. Right. Do you like the Brute Crute tonight or what?
I don't like the Brew Crew. I'm going with my man Smiling Sam Alvey, and if you ever see him on Instagram or YouTube, just watch him. He has the most infectious smile ever. Like the guy he just seems to be permanently happy, and it's funny. He's got this crazy kind of reddish haircut, whatever. So Smiling Sam, don't be fooled by the smile of Smiling Sam, because he is a dangerous fighter. This is a guy we've seen cash. He's 7-1 as a favorite, 3-5 as a dog, and he's here at a dog price. But that's really only because of the fact that he's fighting a guy in his hometown with Crute. Crute's an Australian who's 9-0, but if you look at the body of work that Crute has, those 9 guys, kind of really a bunch of nobodies for the most part. But Smiling Sam Alvey is a guy who will fight anybody, anywhere. He moved up to light heavyweight, took this fight on 2 weeks' notice, but he's a guy who always stays ready, always stays in shape. So I think really, in my eyes, watching Alvey fight and the way he fights, he's a guy who can batter you, he can ground and pound you, but he has some great wrestling, great takedown defense as well. I think we're going to be able to see him get a big win here as a plus 120 dog. We've seen that number come all the way down to plus 105. Somebody kind of come back the other way, but I think Smiling Sam is a live dog tonight. You have,
it's funny as I'm looking across your card here, one of the fights I think that's listed early, you're talking about big favorites. Israel, and I don't even want to try to pronounce his last name there, minus 500 on the money line. I guess there are some situations where you go, this is, you talked about the women fight probably going a distance. I guess it was some of these big favorites you look and go, this is going to be over before it starts. So, in this particular fight, taking on Anderson Silva, and everyone knows Anderson Silva, he's going to be the big crowd favorite, obviously, the big name guy here in UFC. But does this fight have a chance of going the distance?
No, it does not. And here's the thing, like I said, everybody knows Anderson Silva, but the name you need to know, and it's not that hard to pronounce, Israel Adesanya. This is a guy who has been lights out electric in his last several fights. He's 15-0. for those who follow kickboxing, he's 75-5.
Wow.
He's got a world-class kickboxing artist. And now that he's wearing the 4-ounce gloves, and he doesn't have to worry about the squared ring. He's got the cage. He has really adapted well. And everybody has compared his style. If you look at, he's tall, slim, darker dude. He basically looks like Anderson Silva. Everybody has compared the two of the guys together, and they both have been aware of that. And this fight looks to me, and I think that's the reason why the UFC even booked this fight, why Dana White booked this fight. This is a passing of the torch here. If you look at the weigh-in yesterday, you saw Silva, his open workouts, which are kind of lazy to begin with. He looked really slow when he was trying to turn things up. He just didn't have the same crisp sharpness in his punches. And then he was at the weigh-in, and then he addressed the crowd. They asked him a couple questions. He got really emotional, and it kind of seemed as if that moment kind of hit him like, hey, you know what? This might be the last time I do this. And now he's going up against the guy who grew up watching him, who pretty much has copied his style, for lack of a better term, with Israel Adesanya. I think he's going to win this one quickly. I split a unit between playing to win by knockout or TKO. That price was at minus $1.50. It's gone down. I've seen it as low as 140 now. And another half unit on Adesanya to win in round 2. I don't think this is going to be an explosive first round. I think we're going to see these guys kind of trade a little bit. They both know they can't make mistakes because, look, Anderson Silva, even at 44 years old, still has legitimate knockout power. So I think we're going to see a feeling out in the first round, but I think the second round is when Adesanya is going to turn things up, and I don't see this one going into round 3. So at plus 420 on that, combine that with the KO prop, we're looking for hopefully a big payday.
Yeah, it's going to be a great night. That is for sure. It's a great day across the sports landscape. And he is Alex B. Smith, sportsmemo.com. You can follow him on Twitter at @AxSmithSports. And I would follow him all day today because he is going to be tweeting across all the sports here that he likes. Definitely check him out. His page at sportsmemo.com. Gave you a couple of hockey picks here. Gives you his UFC card. It doesn't get any better than that. And Alex, we appreciate your time as always, my friend. Good luck tonight. Enjoy the games, and we'll talk to you again during the week, man.
All right, thanks so much, Joe. Thank you for having me. We'll talk to you soon.